Light Touch is a non-medical wellness device designed to support calm, regulation, and more restful sleep in the midst of everyday stress. For first responders and other high-stress professionals, it offers a simple way to support steadier functioning, recovery, and overall well-being. To learn more, check out episode 317 or visit mylighttouch.com. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tum. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. So getting to meet you at the Second Alarm Project and talk to you and get one of those world famous Donna Brown hugs, that was fantastic. And you're just good people. So I'm excited to just kind of talk about what your reflections have been as you've been retired, but still working alongside first responders, very active in the first responder wellness and support space with this humility. And then also some of your own kind of reflections as you've come across some challenges and just want to talk about things.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
what's kept you fueled? What's kept you fired up in this whole thing? Like you've been, as you just told me before the recording, like what, 20-ish years coming out from retirement, but still, I mean, you're author, working with nonprofits, just all around training, struggle well, correct?
Correct.
And so, yeah, just doing all these things and like just convicted in this really, really purposeful passion.
Uh, I think the books kind of started that. Gosh, and I wrote the first one in 27, but that's really kind of what fueled my fire for the mental health side of first responders is just that people don't really understand what it's truly like to do any of the first responder jobs. Obviously, my bigger passion is with law enforcement since that's my roots. Not long, well, I guess about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with a progressive disease, in which I did what everybody does is like, it kind of hit me with a ton of bricks and the typical why me and those types of things. And right about that time, the Second Alarm Project, which is a Florida nonprofit, they reached out to me, the deputy director did, and they're like, look, I've read your books. We understand you're passionate about the mental health side. And by no means am I an expert, I promise you that. Just something, obviously, I came from the era where, as a lot of us have, is suck it up generation. We never talked about it. We'd had some local first responder suicides, and they told me that they were primarily created for the firefighter world and asked me if I would consider joining them part-time. They were getting a lot of training requests from law enforcement agencies. They didn't have anybody on staff with a law enforcement background. And it was really kind of a no-brainer because I told her first and foremost, I'm retired. And they're like, no, you want to work 5 hours this week? Great. If you want to work 0, great. If you want to work 20, great. And it was kind of hard to say no. And that just kind of grew into back to teaching, which truly training is my roots in law enforcement. I worked in the training union. I was a FTO, field training sergeant, just always part of who I was. And to get back into that was really kind of cool. At the same time, I was introduced to Struggle Well and eventually became an instructor, which for them they're called guides. And that just really fell into really helped me a lot with, I was still struggling with being newly diagnosed and what do I do with this? And that really kind of set the tone for where I am today.
Yeah. There's a part I really want to focus on because we talk about identity and we talk about this work-life balance or quote unquote imbalance in management. I think that's super relevant and it's a continual work in progress for myself and truly everyone. The job demands a lot, especially if you want to be really good. So with that, I think the intention demanded is high. But one thing that I really like about what you just said was recognizing this passion and this acumen for teaching and training through your career. And you could even say through your books, your teaching and training about this world that a lot of people don't know unless they are in it and they know it, they're alongside it. And I do remember from our original interview and recording, you talked about engaging with students, and you had a very clever way of helping a student, I believe it was like a high schooler, recognize like an officer safety, like why police would be uncomfortable with people approaching them. And you're telling a story about walking through the classroom, you know, you're not a large intimidating person. And especially in this teaching mode, this very open candor, right? But you're walking towards this young man and you're just basically encroaching on his bubble, right? Not like a cop bubble, but just everybody has a bubble, and you're just standing right there and he kind of starts leaning back and you basically helped him understand, helped illustrate to the classroom like why that is really uncomfortable. And also we're covered in weapons, and also people do try to hurt police. And so it just has me focused on, I suppose, wanting people to think about what it is that fuels them, because it can be the job, but it can't just be the job, right? But you identified it's connecting with people, and I've seen so many examples of that, and you identified it's teaching. And I really hope that people recognize those pearls of activity that they do in their day to day job that can absolutely and should absolutely follow them as their chapters change in life.
Well, and this is also morphed into which the post you had recently on LinkedIn, you asked a question, and my answer to you was communications. And that is something that the books did allow me to do, was to get out and speak to Jane and John Doe
Mhm.
community groups that really had no idea what first responders do, the toll that it takes, not just mentally, but physically, and shift work and those kinds of things. And it's all about communications. And I teach a very basic class out at our local academy, and you have to take the time. People don't understand what you do or why to do it. Now, can you do that on every single call? Absolutely not. But if you have the time, be willing to engage with people, have those conversations. Sometimes people aren't going to understand, some people don't want to understand, but you may reach that one person and that one person can pass it on. So I am very passionate about the communication side, and that goes with, first responders talking with their families. The communication side there is how important it is to family life and those types of things. So it has kind of morphed over the years.
Yeah. I think it's just that openness, right? Like, yeah, you to have a conversation, to have a connection, you need both sides. But at least if we as police are open to when people want to have the conversation, but we got to listen first and then answer the questions, right? And then ask some questions. And I think what comes to mind is just the concept of curiosity, right? Like just wondering what else could be true, asking yourself like why not, uh, and then also considering for the sake of empathy, which you're so demonstrative of. You say you're not an expert, but I'm like, before the recording, you're an expert in so many things. I would say you're an empathy expert for sure, and just like a personal cheerleader. I think that you're just kind of this positive, igniting spirit that people around you get to learn and get to feel that. And I highly suspect that people that listen to you get to do that too. And so that is a huge motivator in wanting to have you back on. That's been way, way, way overdue, right? Several years. But I think that is a thing. Like we say, curiosity killed the cat, but I think curiosity is probably one of the biggest antidotes to this divisiveness and this tribalism and this negativity and hate that is like all too common in our circles.
I welcome the questions. Of course, again, I'm not in the job anymore, but people ask me, they'll see a news clip or read an article, and people still will reach out to me. Well, I don't understand. And again, I'm so far removed from, 20 years retired now, but the basics are the basics. And so I don't mind answering questions. And this is a class, I guess about 2 years ago, I was teaching. It was a struggle well class. And I made a comment about when I retired, I went through a phase. It was very difficult. Wherever I drove in town, it was like, oh, I worked a suicide
Mm,
there, a stabbing there, mass casualty incident there, and it was just wherever I went, and I started having issues with that. And at one of the breaks, an officer, he was active duty officer, came up to me and he said, "I thought I was the only person who felt that way." So just the power of a simple statement that I made, resonated with him, and I've made it a point to make that comment in any of the classes I teach, and without failure, at least one person comes up to me and says the same thing, and it's again, we don't talk about things, and that was just we're not
yeah.
talking about a deep, dark secret, that was just something that, had bothered me when I retired, and I
Mhm.
think we need more of that within the professions as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great example of just sharing, right? Like, people have such an easy time getting quote unquote triggered or upset by something, right? Like, I've even heard people, there's a saying, it's okay not to be okay. And I've heard and seen people comment or say, it's also okay to be okay, like in this kind of like, retort. And I'm like, of course it's okay to it's great to be okay. It's great to be great. Like I'm not upset about what someone's trying to say in the vein of support, in the vein of empathy. And that's where we get so twisted, I think, sometimes. I really like that because it's an example where you're like, hey, I'm driving around, I'm thinking about all these like kind of like rough things I've experienced and seen. It's not a trauma dump. You're just reflecting, right? Like I think that that's a great way to talk about vulnerability. You're just sharing. Like if people want to swat it away, okay, they can swat it away. But other people are like, oh, I'm not weird for thinking of that stuff too. I'm not saying like I just have extreme trauma all the time looking at everything. What I'm saying is that these are not average thoughts of, folks that didn't work in this type of job. I've shared that until I moved out of my house that my wife and I and we started our family in, but we had been there for years. I was there before she was. It was the neighboring city to where I work, and I would see the type of things and the type of crimes, and also there were just some kind of I suppose imprinted negative experiences that my wife and I reflect on after we left. But I've shared like I didn't realize how hyper vigilant I was in my own home all the time until I left. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm not saying people need to move. I'm not saying all that, but to just be aware of that. I'm sure there's a lot of things I could have done in retrospect to help with that. Yeah, but like a person snooping around my backyard when I was active canine, and like the dog barking just like would kind of set me off. And then seeing somebody kind of just troll through the neighborhood on a bicycle in the middle of the night after I got home, and literally just right after I pulled into the driveway in my marked car, I'm like, great. Now that dude, whatever he's up to at 3 in the morning, knows that I'm a cop that lives here. Right. So I just think that these are healthy things to share if people want to accept them and people want to listen and reflect on them.
Well, I can guarantee you, I mean, like, if you worked a, traffic fatality with a child today, I can guarantee you there's another cop that's worked one of those.
Yeah.
And so that I mean, you have those shared experiences, it's just connecting and actually talking about those things. Like I said, it was
Yeah.
just a very innocuous, simple statement that I just made in the class, and I couldn't believe the response I get every single class when I bring that up now. And one of the officers told me, he says, I was talking to my wife and telling her that when I retire, we might have to move because of that thought process.
Mhm.
Everybody struggles, and that's something that we need to normalize. And a lot of the struggles we all have aren't even job related.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
as we age, we have aging parents we have to take care of. And that's having been through that, that's stressful,
Mhm.
an unruly teenager. I mean, there's just a lot of life things.
Can't wait.
You have time yet. You have time.
I have some time,
So
yeah.
when you add life into what you experience at work, we all struggle, and we just have to stop. We have to normalize that.
Yeah. That's such a thing, and it's like, and I think that that is the key. You have these naysayers that are like, "Well, are we too weak to do this job we signed up for?" It's like, no, but it's just like life's hard.
Hmm.
Life's hard. Trying to start a family and being unsuccessful for a long, long time, like that was really stressful. That was really cruddy. I see it. I see the same struggles happening to people in my circles, and I really feel for them because my wife and I went through that. It really sucks. Uh, that's completely aside from the job,
Hmm.
but then when you're sleep deprived and you're going to calls where people are trying to hurt your buddies and yelling at you, like, yeah, that is also contributing stress. Like, let's just be real about it. So I think that it is good to look at that holistically, right? To zoom out. And even as you said, thinking back to when you're talking about how you've been retired out for a while, I think it doesn't distance you from it. I think it just offers you a different perspective because sometimes that's a more objective perspective. Um, and I think that you even see people quote unquote villainize that because they would be quick to be like, well, Donna's been out of the game, so what does she know? And Eric's been working a desk for the last couple of years, so what does he know about whatever? It's like you're absolutely right. I don't. We all have extremely specific individual experiences, which is kind of the key to empathy. It's like we're just trying it on and trying to consider this other conversation is where it comes from. But I don't think I need to really explain. I probably spend too much time explaining the positive intent of this show. I don't think anyone's spending their precious time if they don't want to come along with us.
Yeah. Well, 80, this is from the National Science Foundation. 80% of the thoughts we encounter every day, every single person, 80% are negative.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I try to tell people, be aware of what you're consuming intellectually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great podcasts out there. There's also some that are very, very negative, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They do nothing but try to fuel that divide between law enforcement and the public. It's
Mm-hmm.
us against them. Some communities, it's a little bit tougher than in other communities. I'm in a community that really wasn't an issue and still isn't an issue. I mean, yeah, since situations come up and I sit back and I watch, but for the most part, the community is very supportive. So I just tell people like I said, books you read, music you listen to. I mean, um, I know I tell it there's a song by Carrie Underwood. I can't remember the name of it. It's the one she takes the Louisville Slugger to both headlights.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Before he cheats.
Right. Okay. So I love the song. It's very upbeat. But really, when you listen to the words, it's incredibly angry.
Pretty messed up. Yeah.
It's incredibly violent.
It's like it's like Minority Report. Before he does the bad thing, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this worse. Yeah.
Right. And part of that for me, that's something I try to practice every day. I'm not perfect. And of course, I'm at a different point in my life with the progressive diseases. Every day is just precious to me. Every conversation
Mm-hmm.
I have is precious to me. Every opportunity to have conversations with people like you. Instead of you gave me that answer, instead of why me, why not me? And you move from that victim standpoint, personality or situation you're in to what can I do with it? And I said, I'm not perfect. There's days I allow myself the why me. And then the next
Of
day I
course.
get up and go, nope, got to move on.
Hmm.
So,
But even what you just did, even what you just shared is so empowering because we're all gonna find ourselves on our knees at times. Like life, the universe kicks us down and it gives permission, right? Because now someone one day, myself included, is not gonna be like, dang it, I didn't keep that positive attitude. I got diagnosed or like, I lost another friend and I just feel like not doing anything. I feel like a wimp. I feel like a quitter, right? Whatever. But now I'm like, you know what? Donna has bad days too. So I can have them too. Or I have bad moments, right? And so that's the thing. And even when we're talking about like this conversation of us, quote unquote, police and them, the public, it's also just us like police and us police. And that's what's so annoying being quote unquote mid manager, right? Like this admin, cops. It's like, it's hard enough, guys. Let's just do the policing thing. We need to recognize this team and we need to recognize the team in police and the community. Like we are of the community. And whether you work, an hour from where you live, you're still people. And I think that the longer I go in this thing called career in life, I think it's really healthy to think about for perspective, where Donna is. And one day we will be there too. One day you will be 20 years removed. And how do you want to conduct yourself, right? Like you're not always going to have the gun and the badge. One day, hopefully, in some ways, to offer you critical insight, you're going to be around people that have a terrible impression of the police and you're not a police anymore. And how do you navigate that conversation? Do you get defensive? You're like, well, you don't know. I was one of them and I still am, thin blue line stuff. Or are you just like, I hear what you're saying I can imagine why someone feels this way because of their experiences or because of their family's experiences. So how can we do better as human beings, just being more human? Like, how can we offer that? Because that's the thing I think we're missing. And I don't feel like I'm saying something super deep. I think we all know it, but like, why do we do this thing? Because we care about humanity and we're willing to put ourselves out there and we see people do amazing things in care of humanity. This is the job we've done or chosen to do that. A lot of people choose these jobs to do it in other angles and ways, teaching, counseling, what have you, right? So, like, when we get back to the crux of it, why do we do it? Because we care. So let's keep caring. Let's not tribe up and act in this way because it's more about connection than what we have different that sets us apart.
I think that's part of sometimes we forget why we really do the job. We forget the basics. And it is
Mm,
like you just said, it's I really care about people. I love the community. Um, and for me, lived and worked in the same community. I'm part of the community. My friends live here, their kids go to school, raise their kids and in this community. And again, it goes back to me, you've got to be and I learned there's days I have to bite my tongue is to be a good listener. Sometimes that's not easy.
mm,
And especially when I do get asked those questions, I jump at it and then I have to stop myself and go, listen to their perspective, listen to where they're coming from. And like you said, sometimes it's prior experience they've had. They've had a bad experience. And a lot of people, they just want to be seen and heard.
mhm.
It's really not about you solving the problem. They just want to be seen and heard and then feel valued. Those are the three things people want. And a lot of that can just be accomplished by listening,
Yeah,
being there.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind we kind of go back to your diagnosis and having the hard time with that? Because you are someone that has a strong awareness of, mental resilience and health. And what kind of things helped you work through that? What kind of things have you reflected on, in the last few years that are continuing to be either helpful tools or themes?
Probably once the initial shock wore off. One, I am truly blessed. I have an amazing team of physicians over at Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. It's not always convenient. It's about 2.5 hours from here, but they were willing to sit and answer all my questions. I then chose, I'm going to educate myself. I learned as much as I could about my disease and not from Dr. Google, but
Mm,
from reputable sites, Cleveland Clinic, Harvard Medical School. I mean, those types of Johns Hopkins, those types of organizations, and read everything I could. And for me, the key was I have to keep moving. Some days it's harder, some days I don't, but I can slow the progression of the disease. I can't cure it, I can't stop it. And so once I really felt comfortable, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, but comfortable with the disease and what I could do, I had some control back. Sometimes when you
mm.
get a diagnosis, you feel like you've lost all control, and I get that, but educating myself and taking the bull by the horns, that just gave me a whole different perspective and gave me a
From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital-grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on-site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com.
like I said, I truly appreciate I start every morning, I get my coffee and I go sit outside and I spend 5 minutes a Donna time just being grateful.
Mm,
And that just I try to have that set the tone for my day. Again, not perfect, but,
yeah.
you know,
Is that something you did before, or is that something that's strengthened as a habit?
oh, that's definitely since. I did not do that before, and I appreciate the little things more. Some things are a little bit more difficult for me to do now. There are some things I really struggle to do that I used to do with ease. So, like I said, I have my moments. So when I have days that I can actually do it, I'm truly appreciative and grateful. I'll say golf is one. I'm a very poor golfer,
Mm,
like a 19 handicap, but playing in the Florida heat and humidity in the summer now is really tough for me. So I may be able to I can go out and play 9 holes earlier in the morning before it gets too hot. So I mean, I've learned ways to work around it where I can still do it, not the way I used to, but it's an adjustment. It's a continuing adjustment for me.
yeah. Well, thank you for that because one thing I was debating how to ask it, but has there been silver lining, right? Is there a gift kind of imbued or embedded in this bad news? And you said right there, like to have this practice of just sheer gratitude, 5 minutes. That's not a long time, right? Like we all have 5 minutes. If you think you don't, look at your screen time, like go on your phone and ask it if it doesn't tell you. Then you're full of BS. You do have time. You have 5 minutes at least, but just to stop and have your coffee, that's one of my favorite parts of the day, and sometimes I go to bed just, like, looking forward to having coffee because it's usually I'm the first one up, or my wife ties me if she sets an alarm, but I love that, and one thing I wanted to ask you is, like, have you reflected more on sources of joy and awe? And I kinda hear a little bit of that too.
And I think I've heard this from a lot of people. Um, And that's actually kind of how, with Struggle Well, how post-traumatic growth was born. The research was with groups of people, adults who, in the prime of their life, lost their eyesight or, became an amputee or things like that. A lot of them feel like they're in a better place now than they were before because it gives you an entirely different perspective where you start to appreciate not just the big things, but the little things. Matter of fact, and I don't always do it, but at night, I try to, right when I'm laying down, getting ready to try to shut my brain off is what am I grateful for today? What happened today? That was pretty cool
Yeah,
or whatever. It kind of sets the tone for me at night as well. Like I said, I'm a work in progress, believe me.
yeah,
But that's one thing with this. I'm not sure well, I wouldn't have fallen into probably the Second Alarm Project, which has led to Teaching Struggle Well for the Boulder Crest Foundation and being able to connect with other people and all first responders, and on this level is pretty different. There's some amazing stories. I don't know if you've met Dan Bright
yeah, we met there, yeah.
at the conference. I thought you did. Dan, to me, is the poster child for why me versus, what can I do with this? He
Mm,
told me before he was paralyzed if you'd have talked to him about mental health and, you know, all the talking about stuff and all that, he would have laughed in your face. And,
mhm,
you know, now that he's also a struggle well instructor, but he and his wife this last year graduated from Colorado State and both have their masters now and are licensed therapists. And their focus is on military veterans because Dan's a vet and all first responders. And that
mm,
never would have happened had Dan not been shot and paralyzed. So, I
yeah,
mean, it's what you choose to do with it. He's my inspiration,
100%.
honestly. He
Yeah,
my inspiration.
such a compelling story and what he's done with, like, legitimate, institutional wellness programs. And so, yeah, if you don't know Dan and his story, look that up. But yeah, there are those gifts if we look for them or we choose to create them. And, kind of going back to, as you shared, the progression of your working through that was, of course, the shock. And I think that's really helpful to recognize that you get the bad news and there is the what just happened? And then there's the why me? And on very small levels, like when I've had different health, I guess, learnings or speed bumps, like I have had those feelings. And it's been really frustrating to, especially for someone that I felt was doing quote unquote all the right things, and then to get the blood work back and being like, you got some issues, and then having to kind of grapple with that. But I think that there's a lot of lessons in that. I've said many times that I don't think I'd be doing any of this stuff. I think my career would have continued on a very different path if I hadn't lost my buddy Diego. And it's part of the presentation I get. He's very prominently featured because, I wish I could have him back, but since I can't, what can I do with this inspiration? What can I do with his lessons? Like, how do I show up differently as a dad? How do I show up differently as a cop with the community? Like all these things. And I heard this, you underline this power of ownership, which I think is such a critical thing. Like, what can I control? Like, what story do I want to keep writing? Like, God, the universe, whatever you choose to believe, or just fate or luck, bad luck, however you want to say it, you're writing your story and they inserted this chapter and this plot twist, and you're like, I did not approve this. Too bad you don't get final you don't get final edits. You're not the publisher here, but you do get to keep writing, right? Within the power that you have. And so what I hear there is acceptance. Like you underline that, and yeah, shout out to Strugglewell. I have not been, but between people like you, Andy McCurdy, people that I know very closely and highly respect, like I just keep hearing really good things about it, and I think it's worth saying that because there's a lot of, I mean, wellness, like anything else, is a business, and I don't mean to say that it's just chock full of disingenuousness, just disingenuity. I don't know what the word is, but you get what I'm saying. But there is quality difference in anything, in any training, any curriculum, any type of event. So
Well, and for me, struggle well was different. Yes, it's instead of everybody's heard of PTSD, very few people have heard of PTG, post traumatic growth.
mhm,
So it's built on one of the premises of you have a choice in what you I did not choose for this to happen to me, but I have a choice in what I want to do with it or can do with it. And that's truly for anybody, not even first responders or military veterans, which Warrior Path is Boulder Crest.
mm,
That's for our veterans. It's called Warrior Path. Struggle Well is for our first responders. But that can be anybody in life. Nobody
yeah,
chooses to have something bad happen to them, but you do have a choice in what you do with it. Period. I
absolutely.
mean, that's very simple.
And that's the ultimate superpower. I love that. Can you talk a little bit about Brody? I want to talk about Brody and what that's been like, integrating this fantastic creature into your life.
I do have Brody. Brody is my new service dog. I just got him in December. He's down here attached at my feet.
Yeah, he's somewhere down there.
And again, had I not gotten involved with Second Alarm Project and with Struggle Well, I wouldn't have Brody. Obviously, if I hadn't had my diagnosis, I wouldn't have Brody. I was in Naples, Florida, Southwest Florida, teaching. I taught for 2 days down at Naples Police Department, and 3 officers walked in with golden retrievers. They were all therapy dogs, which they call them comfort canines,
Hmm.
and were in the class. And I got to talking, and they all came from a nonprofit there in Naples called Golden Paws, PAWS. Very cool. So after the class, I did some research and I reached out to them, and it's just a phenomenal organization. And people with my disease don't normally get service dogs, but they're like, look, you do qualify. We want to give back to you because you're still giving back. You're still out there teaching
Mm,
because they give dogs to give dogs. There's no cost. They give dogs to our military veterans who have been in combat wounded or have PTSD, or, and this is not normal for the majority of organizations, but they also do for first responders who are injured in the line of duty. And that's any first responder or those that have been diagnosed with PTSD. And so I'm eternally grateful. I couldn't believe it. So I went down there to train with him in December for a week. It's a phenomenal facility, like a 30,000 square foot facility. And, he's just been an amazing gift. And again, a gift I wouldn't have gotten. It was actually Dan Bright, because Dan has a
mm,
service dog from Freedom Service Dogs in Colorado. He has a 100-pound giant schnauzer named Fergus.
hmm.
And, you probably met Fergus, down there at
Yeah.
the conference,
Yeah,
and
he's a big boy.
yeah, Dan encouraged me, he said, "You should pursue this." And I'm like, I just never thought about it, so, um which is cool, like, I get to take him to training with me. He's also dual trained as a therapy dog, so, like, I taught a 2-hour class a couple weeks ago, and he did his thing, he laid off in the corner, and as soon as we were done, I was like, "Anybody wanna meet Brody?" And they're like, "Yeah," so I just said, "Go
Yeah.
go say hello," and he just started wandering through the
Golden
class.
retriever. Yeah.
Exactly, people were petting
Yeah.
on him and hugging on him, and, I'm my plans are now that we really bonded is, like, we have a standalone consolidated dispatch center, and I still know a lot of the people there. I know the director, their wellness coordinators. Take him up there and just let him, roam around and rub on some of the dispatchers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, it's opened up a whole 'nother avenue for me too, and obviously, he's been a lifesaver for me. He goes pretty much everywhere with me. Um, so I'm like I
That's
said,
so
I'm
good.
eternally grateful.
Yeah. And you're paying that forward, and you're like, I see you 2 as a partnership, as you just outlined. You're teaching, you're helping people recognize what they can do. Brody, like so many dogs, are just this like beacon of joy, right? And then people get that oxytocin from petting the dog, even if they weren't sure they wanted to. Like you see all these people whenever you go to a conference or wherever you're around, support dogs, therapy dogs. They just have this gravitational pull, even from people or for people that I think would self-describe as not necessarily animal people or dog people, but it's so healing. I love that,
Well,
and
I
I am partial to dogs for
yeah,
sure.
two quick stories on that. I had a doctor's appointment, about 3, 4 weeks ago, and at this particular doctor's, there's, other doctors in town that refer patients in, so they don't always have appointments. So they are referred, they go, they sit, and they wait, and I had an appointment, so Brody and I are sitting there, and some of these people were getting very impatient, not nice,
Mm,
especially the 2 particular nurses were taking it out on him, and one was a younger nurse, and I kinda felt bad for him, so I had my appointment, and as I'm leaving, um, I heard them, and I looked down a hallway, and the 2 nurses are standing there, and they would go, "He's such a sweet boy, and he's beautiful," and I said, "Would you like to meet him?" And they're like, "Can we?" And he went directly to the younger nurse that was really catching the brunt of it, and just really kinda
mhm.
was phenomenal to me. He knew. And so
They
he,
know.
went to her, then they went to both. They were on the floor petting and, talking with him. And it just, like you said, it's just, 5 minutes of listening, talking, just letting him do his thing. I think it made a big difference for them. Um,
Yeah,
Same with a little boy. It
yeah,
was a parents, and I think he's about 6 or 7. I was in the grocery store with Brody, and we walked by, and the father saw the service dog, which service dogs you should not approach. Can like if
sure,
someone
yeah.
came to me and said, "May I pet your dog?"
Mhm.
That's fine. I can set Brody up and then let him flip his switch from service to therapy, and more than happy to do that. And the father said, "No, you can't pet him." So we went on down the aisle, and I turned back, and little boy's just watching Brody go down the aisle. So I stopped and I turned around and I said, "Would you like to meet him?" And his father's like, "We can do that." And I said, "Yes, sir." And so
Yeah,
all 3 of them and and I'm like, Brody can bring 2 minutes of relief or happiness to a kid or to, a family. Perfect.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, Donna, I sincerely appreciate a lot of things. Beyond this conversation and sharing your wisdom, your joy, your gratitude, your passion. Personally, I mean, you've been like my peer support person at times. I remember venting to you and just kind of connecting on some things in Orlando, but also, you know, remotely, but also just being a cheerleader. I think I'd never been solicited or asked or invited to speak on that type of a stage, right? Sure, teaching and speaking on wellness locally, whatever. But like so many people, this imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do this thing and prep this thing. But I hear this a lot, and I get asked this specifically because of the platform, people kicking up something or feeling imposter syndrome. I mean, that's normal. And so I appreciate you just being like a personal cheerleader, and so much of a gift I feel like you shared with me. And I'm just really grateful to have this time together and to know you and to be able to share you a little bit more through this show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And you did amazing in Orlando at the conference. So don't sell
Thank you.
yourself short. I hope you get many, many more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I'm here to help where I can. Um,
And I'm always here for you anytime.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with, and then where people can reach out and get in contact with you?
Uh, Gosh, the easiest way to I can give you my email. I don't know if you can post that.
Yeah, we can
With
put it in the show notes.
yeah,
You're on LinkedIn. I
I
know a
am
lot of
on
people will
LinkedIn.
check that out.
I am on. I don't do a lot so much anymore, but I am on Instagram and Facebook. It's called Behind and Beyond the Badge, which is the book series name. But honestly, I don't do a lot on social media like I used to. Not
Which is
even
probably
on
why you're
LinkedIn.
feeling more positive these days. I
I
yeah,
probably
I
do more on LinkedIn than anything. Just, there's people that are more in line with, I guess, where I'm at. And I make a
it's
conscious
the most
choice.
constructive. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the most constructive one in my
yeah.
opinion.
I make a conscious choice I have to surround myself with positive people, with positive things. It's just too easy to go down a negative rabbit hole. Again, I have my days, but I guess, try to be a good listener and don't get offended when people ask questions. Be okay with sharing. Be appreciative and grateful for the simple things in life. We are the average of the 3 to 5 people we spend the most time with. And if you think of that at work, how many of us know that person that can walk in the room and instantly suck the life out of the room?
Mhm.
Those are people that I just don't have the time to be around and don't want to be around anymore. So just be aware.
Thank you so much, Donna. A
Thank
real
you.
treasure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.